Alright, so today we're going to be going over how to completely disassemble your volt. I'm going to describe that if you have any specific types of issues, that this is how you remedy those problems. So first and foremost, most common question is that my volt is vibrating, so where is the problem coming from? First and foremost, always check your control box and your battery voltage. If your battery is low, that could be a problem. If your control box is vibrating, you might need to tighten up some screws up there. Last thing is if you notice that this top part, if you could do this and it kind of moves up and down, you would just take a 1/8 Allen and then tighten up this screw right here. That will solve 90% of your issues, okay? So now we'll get into the disassembly. So first and foremost, we're gonna be removing the belts. I remove this counterweight first. If you're gonna be doing this on your sled, always turn the volt away from your monitor so this counterweight doesn't fall onto your screen. You're going to take your 7/64, place it here. I do about 8 to 10 half turns, and that should be enough to loosen up the motor to remove your belt. And don't worry about these belts breaking or anything like that. They're actually very strong. They're threaded internally, and it'd be very difficult to actually break those. Okay. So same thing with this motor. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Really make sure you do not pull these screws all the way out. There is a washer inside of this one holding it in place. If that washer falls out, it's going to rattle around inside this housing and you'll have to take off the whole housing to put it back together. Okay. For this one, I'm just going to push the belt on the outside of the pulley and kind of twist. So it feels a little tight, so I'm actually going to back it out just a tad bit more. So you twist like that and the belt will come loose. Okay? Now I'm going to remove the volt module. So first you're going to take a 1/16 and loosen the screw on the top and the bottom right here next to the Steadicam volt label. These are grabbing down onto the yoke to help reduce any vibrations. Back these out. You don't have to take these screws all the way out. Just enough that it's no longer touching the yoke. Okay. And unplug the encoder cable, just drop it in here so it's just out of my way. Take a 1/8 Allen, place it inside of this hole, and then just loosen it and the horseshoe will just come right off. Okay. So now if you were going to send your volt in for maintenance, this is all you need to send to us, plus your control box, okay? Everything else here you don't actually need to send in, and it's actually recommended that you try to keep this stuff. Now, you could keep operating like this, but keep in mind with the volt encoder cable and the counterweight trunnion screw on the other side, that it may not be center balanced. So, I will show you the next steps to remove the rest of the volt from the gimbal to get the gimbal to be center balanced. So next I want to show this trunnion pulley. This is a very common thing that a lot of people have been running into an issue of. This pulley is created in 2 parts and then pressed together. So what happened is usually people when they dock, they come at an angle or you hand it off to your grip and they came too hard down onto the padded dock and it just broke where the pulley was pressed together. So this can be just taken off because the belt tension is actually holding it together strong enough that this doesn't really need to be there. So I'll show you how to remove this whole piece. So I'm going to take a 1/16 Allen, and instead of going for this screw first, you actually want to go for these top ones, okay? So what I do is I just loosen it, just one rotation. Come on, grab it. And what that does is it loosens this whole assembly and makes this screw come out a lot easier. If you try to go straight to this screw, it'll most likely end up stripping. Alright, so just remove that. Now say you do want to try to keep using this. If this isn't too bent up, you could take a pair of pliers and kind of crimp them back together. There we go. I'm going to remove the rest of the encoder assembly. So first I have to remove this part completely. And the other side where the encoder cable is being held down. Now, very important, you want to make sure that you keep these screws with this assembly. These are slightly longer so they can work with the cable versus this side, which are a little bit shorter screws. Okay. Once I get that out of the way, I'm just going to leave this on here. All right, so I'm going to take 3 seconds and loosen the volt encoder assembly. Okay. All right, so I'm going to remove these. And just set that aside, okay? It's okay that these are exposed. That's actually not holding anything of the gimbal together. So next we're going to be removing the trunnion screw. So you're going to take your blue whale tool, use these pins, and line up the holes. And then loosen this. Okay. Now, the most important thing of all is this washer. Okay. If you're going to take this off, you have to put this washer back, okay? And look into your kit and you will find the trunnion screw. This has to go back in to make sure it keeps your entire volt yoke attached. Okay. So I'm just going to put this back on. Tighten that down. If you have an Archer, Shadow, or a Pro Volt modification, you won't actually have this type of trunnion screw. You'll actually have something that looks like this, okay? So this is a bearing that sits right on top of this adapter screw, and this will actually screw right into the yoke of the gimbal, okay? And then this is actually your trunnion pulley, which is slightly smaller hole than the M1 Volt or the Volt 1.5. So next I'm going to be removing these adapter rings that are inside of the yoke, okay? So you're going to notice 2 little divots on either side. So you're going to take your blue whale tool again, insert the pins in, and then loosen them. These will come all the way out. Okay. All right. Now if you're going to go back to operating with this gimbal, you're going to want to put your end caps back on to protect your bearings from any sort of dirt or debris. They should thread very smoothly. If you find that it catches, it means you're going to be cross-threading and you're going to damage your yoke. So make sure that these thread in nice and smooth. And then to get them the rest of the way on, you're going to take your blue whale, insert the pins in, and tighten them down.
From this point, your gimbal is center balanced and you can continue operating. You don't actually have to remove your volt encoder ring, but I will show you how to remove your volt encoder ring in case you're having the following issues.
Let's say you're flipping over to low mode and you feel a kind of thud or something similar to that. Or if you wiggle this around, you notice there's a lot of play. This amount of play is normal on any gimbal, okay? You may notice also if you were able to grab this and just loosen like that, your pan housing is too loose and this needs to be tightened down. Now temporarily you can take your hand, even with this on the slide, you can do this and try to tighten it down. Just be cautious if you're going to do any whip pans and it may loosen. Now I'm going to show you how to actually remove the encoder ring so you can tighten this back down, okay? It works best if you have a newer X-Acto knife, the cleaner the better, to kind of work your way around the encoder ring, okay? So you're going to see here there's a little adhesive that's holding the encoder ring to the gimbal. So what you're going to do is you take your X-Acto knife on the gimbal end and start working your way around and removing the adhesive. So right now I'm just working underneath and just kind of prying it up. And if you do this cleanly enough, you can actually reuse the adhesive over again. And you don't have to use the new one over, replace them. So I'm just kind of peeling it off right there. And that's not too bad, okay? Now to get this to seat, you can take your gimbal tool, these two prongs, place into these holes, and then you're gonna twist. So you're gonna wanna torque it really good. You're gonna want to put quite a bit of elbow grease into it, okay? There you go.